Iris, first of all, tell us what is happening in the Palestinian city of Jenin and what triggered the unrest there.
What's triggered the unrest is that there was a series of attacks inside Israel, the most recent on Thursday night, and that gunman came from Jenin. And what we are now seeing is an episode where Israel goes in night after night, day after day, seeking to make arrests. There are raids, there are clashes, there are exchanges of fire. Now, Jenin has a history of being committed to the resistance, and that goes all the way back to the 1980s. During the Second Intifada, I think something like 23 suicide bombers came from Jenin. There was a big fight with Israeli soldiers in Jenin that's actually 20 years ago now. April 2022 is 20 years. So there's all that history there, and I think it's familiar for Israel and the military to go right back into Jenin. But I have heard Israeli military analysts saying that it may not be effective, because what Israel is looking at now is a series of attacks by lone gunmen or gunmen operating with small cells. They're not being sent in by militant groups. They're not being funded or trained by militant groups. So perhaps this is not the time to go back into Jenin, familiar and as that is, but maybe this is the time to consider the real challenge, which is how to get intelligence on lone wolf attacks.
Meanwhile, Iris, there's been yet another stabbing attack inside Israeli territory.
That's right. There's a lot of tension. I think there are 5 or now 6 people dead within the last 48 hours. And what we see is that Israel has a commitment to stopping illegal Palestinian workers when they find them. So this morning before dawn, an Israeli policeman saw a man who he said was acting suspiciously. He was a 40-year-old Palestinian man from Hebron. When the policeman stopped him, the Palestinian man pulled out a knife and tried to stab the policeman. The policeman pulled out his gun. He shot the Palestinian. I think you can see how much tension there is. That Palestinian is now the 6th person to die within the past 48 hours plus. And not all of them are even related to this ongoing struggle, the last few days of it. But there is so much tension and there is so much bloodshed that everything is escalating.
Iris Makler.